how would you define anxiety? What exactly is anxiety?
Well, I would say, and this is not going to be the whole thing for sure, but anxiety is a physical experience. It's it's one of those holistic emotional, physical, mental, cognitive experiences that we have when we feel out of control or overwhelmed. And it can be tied to trauma, but isn't necessarily. And it can be tied to physical expressions, but it isn't necessarily. But yeah, it's usually diagnosed with symptoms around feeling like difficulty concentrating, lack of control, physical expressions like shaking or heart rate speeding up, or moving into like a fight or flight experience. That's my first swing at it.
Great start. Yeah, let's build on that. Martin or Grace?
I can add to it as far as, first, it's a very common experience that people have. I think especially during this pandemic, I experienced lots of anxiety with all the uncertainty and all the changes and the constant adjustments we had to do. And so not surprisingly, so many people in our world have been experiencing a great deal of anxiety, especially in the recent years. But aside from like the disordered aspects of anxiety, I like to normalize it for people that it is just part of our biology. It's a very, God created our bodies to get anxious in the sense of like perceiving danger, something doesn't feel right, something doesn't feel safe. And so it's when we get stuck there that it becomes a problem. But first, it's just anxiety is normal. We all experience it in one form or another. I think it gets interchanged a lot with fear, worry. People throw out, oh, I feel anxious about this, I feel worried about this. But I would distinguish it a bit by saying that like when it comes to fears and worries, it's usually concrete, like there is something specific, a situation, a thing, an animal, something that you can tie that fear or worry to. And hopefully when that situation passes, when that thing that creates the fear, causes the fear is gone, you go back, your body goes back to rest and balance. Anxiety, it's a little bit more of kind of, it's more of like anticipating things that are not always concrete, and uncertainties, future things that don't necessarily like go away when like that particular situation or object or thing kind of goes away for the time being. So anxiety can be a lot more like prevalent. It can be harder to pinpoint. It's hard to describe. It's so complex, and there's so many things that can kind of trigger it and cause it. It could be hormonal imbalances. It could be lack of sleep. It could be life events like a pandemic. There's genetic components to it. So yeah, I'll go there so far. I'll throw that out there.
Yeah, love the contribution. How about you, Martin? What would you add?
I think Suzette and Grace put it really well. I think it's similar to what you were saying, Grace, is this is partly a semantics thing, and I think it's a really good question. Sung is I would also differentiate anxiety from being nervous from fear, because it's a fear is in some ways rational, right? Like if you're standing in front of someone who's a foot taller than you and looks like they're really angry and have a baseball bat, it's right. It's appropriate to be afraid. But anxiety, when it becomes a disorder, is like, well, it's kind of like the car alarm that's always going off, even if no one's actually trying to break into the car, where you sort of get stuck in false alarm mode. And it could be due, as Suzette said, to past trauma, but it could just be due to I get stuck thinking about certain things that part of me knows are not rational. Like I got a bad grade on a test, so that means I'm going to fail my class and I'm going to have a bad GPA. I'm not going to get into college. I'm going to be not going to get a job, and then I'm going to be homeless, and then we catastrophize. Like that feels more like anxiety rather than nervousness about one specific thing that's about to happen, or fear that's based in an actual credible threat. And as others said earlier, it can manifest in many different ways. For some people, very physiologically, raised heart rate, arousal, breathing, tightness, feels more panicky type symptoms. But for others, are shut off. And still for others, and it could be more than one thing, is very behavioral, where I start avoiding things, right? With phobias, I avoid tight spaces, driving, fear of heights, flying, right? So those are things that I would think of in terms of sort of anxiety disorders and ways it can manifest.